Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into all this material about Mason and his life journey. It's fascinating stuff. We
Yeah.
got articles and interviews, even some excerpts from his writing.
Wow.
It seems like his story really reflects what so many of us feel right now, like this pressure to achieve,
Hmm.
adapt to a world that's constantly changing and,
Yeah.
find meaning in all of it.
Absolutely. It's a story that hits close to home for so many people. What really struck me was how Mason's story, it's not just his story. It
Okay.
touches on these universal themes of societal expectations, how technology is impacting everything,
Right.
and just that basic human need to find your place in the world.
Yeah, okay, so we've got a ton to unpack here.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin with a story like this?
Well, the source material starts with Mason's childhood, and I think that's really key.
Okay.
There's this anecdote about him being asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?"
Mm.
when he was only 6 years old.
Wow.
And it's like right from the start. This pressure to define your future self is already there, you
Yeah.
know?
I can totally see how that would set the stage. It's like we're expected to have this grand plan for our lives,
Right.
like this perfect, successful version of ourselves all figured out
Mm-hmm.
before we've even really had a chance to live.
Exactly. And the source material calls this the seed of incompleteness, which I think is just such a powerful phrase.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
this idea that we're not enough just as we are.
Right.
We always have to be striving for something more to be worthy.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
How does that impact you, listener?
Yeah.
Have you felt that pressure in your own life?
Oh, absolutely. All the time.
Yeah.
It's like we're conditioned to chase some external definition of success.
Right. And this is where Mason's early struggles in school become really interesting.
Okay.
The source material talks about how his parents, they put him in private school trying to find the right environment
Right.
for him to thrive.
Yeah.
And even though he wasn't really naturally drawn to academics,
Yeah.
there was this underlying message that he needed to achieve academically to be successful in life.
So even if you don't naturally excel in school,
Right.
there's still this pressure to perform.
Yeah.
What happens when your natural talents or passions don't line up with those expectations?
That's a great question. And that's something Mason really grapples with.
Yeah.
As he gets into high school, we see him trying to find his place.
Okay.
He's focusing more on grades. He gets involved in extracurriculars.
Mm-hmm.
And it's around this time that he encounters these motivational figures like Terry G., who was really popular at the time.
Yeah, Terry G. I remember that name.
Yeah.
Wasn't he like one of those self-help gurus?
Yes.
The follow your passion guy?
Exactly.
I remember those posters being everywhere.
Yeah, they were everywhere.
Yeah.
And this is where things get really interesting because the source material really digs into how this whole follow your passion philosophy
Mm-hmm.
can be both empowering,
Oh, yeah.
but also potentially problematic.
Oh,
On the one hand, it encourages people to think about what excites them
right.
and then go after it.
Yeah.
But it can also create this pressure to find that one singular passion
Right.
and make it your whole identity.
Make it your whole life.
Right. And so what happens when your passion doesn't really translate into a career?
Yeah.
Or what happens when your passions change and evolve over time?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm curious how this all played out for Mason.
Yeah.
So he finds his passion in visual effects, right?
He does. Yeah.
Goes to Drexel, majors in animation and visual effects.
Hmm.
Sounds like the perfect path for someone following their dream.
It does. And the source material talks about how dedicated Mason was.
Yeah.
He really threw himself into his studies,
Mm-hmm.
even made sacrifices in his personal life just to hone his craft.
Wow.
He knew the visual effects industry was competitive,
Right.
and he was determined to make it.
But then this is also when technology enters the picture and starts to shake things up.
Yes.
That's right, the rise of AI, all these other crazy technologies.
Mhm.
The article mentions how that really started to disrupt the whole visual effects industry.
Yeah.
What kind of an impact did that have on someone like Mason?
I mean, imagine spending years and years mastering a craft
Right.
only to have technology come along and potentially make your skills obsolete.
Yeah.
That's what Mason was up against.
Wow.
The source material highlights how these advancements in AI and generative software were changing the game,
Right.
reducing the need for a lot of these specialized roles that Mason was training for.
Yeah.
It's this feeling of being on shaky ground even when you've done everything right.
Yeah, it makes you wonder,
Yeah.
how does that affect you, listener,
Mm-hmm.
in your career path?
Yeah.
Does it make you rethink the skills you're developing?
For sure.
That's a good question for the listener to think about.
It is.
Almost feels like you have to constantly be learning,
Yeah.
adapting, and almost trying to anticipate what skills are going to be valuable in the future.
Mm.
It's a lot. So what happens to Mason?
Well,
He's poured everything into this career path, and now the landscape is shifting beneath his feet.
it leads to a major turning point in his life.
Okay.
He actually ends up getting laid off from his job in visual effects,
Oh, wow.
and he has to figure out what's next.
What do you do?
Yeah, does he try to cling to this career that's becoming increasingly automated,
Right.
or does he try to find a new path?
Sounds like a classic crossroads moment.
Yeah.
And I bet a lot of people listening right now can relate to that feeling,
Mm,
that uncertainty, in the face of all this massive technological change.
absolutely.
So we left off with Mason at this major crossroads in his life. He's been laid off, his whole industry is getting turned upside down by technology,
Hmm.
and he's got to figure out his next move.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be tough.
Yeah, those moments can be really challenging,
Yeah,
but they can also be really powerful opportunities for growth.
I could see that.
For Mason, this is where his story takes this really fascinating turn.
Okay.
Instead of just giving up,
Right.
he decides to take all of these experiences and channel them into writing.
Writing, really. That's interesting.
Yeah,
It seems like kind of a big jump from visual effects.
it does. But the source material highlights how Mason was always kind of drawn to storytelling,
Hmm.
even as a kid,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay.
And when he was going through this really tough time,
Mm-hmm.
he found a lot of comfort in writing, specifically speculative science fiction.
Interesting.
It was a way for him to process all of his anxieties about the future,
Yeah.
about technology,
Right.
about all the rapid changes happening around him.
So he's using writing to kind of make sense of all the chaos, almost like a form of therapy.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating is that this really personal exploration
Yeah.
becomes the foundation for his success as a writer.
Oh, wow.
His first book delves into these exact themes he was wrestling with:
Okay.
artificial intelligence, automation, the impact of technology on society.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But wait, wasn't there something about his first book? I remember reading that it kind of flopped.
Oh, yeah.
What happened there?
This is where the speed of technological advancement really comes into play.
Okay.
The source material explains that Mason's book, it explored all these concepts
Mm-hmm.
that were considered futuristic at the time.
Yeah.
But by the time the book was actually published,
Oh.
real-world technology had already overtaken his fictional world.
So it was like outdated before it even hit the shelves. Out.
It was a setback, for sure.
Yeah.
But what's really remarkable is that Mason didn't let this defeat him.
Good for him.
He took what he learned from that experience
Yeah.
and used it for his next book,
Yeah.
and this is where things really take off for him.
Okay, so what was different about his second book? What made it a hit?
The biggest difference,
Yeah.
according to the source material, is that Mason shifted his focus.
Oh, okay.
Instead of just focusing on futuristic technology.
Right.
His second book explored the emotional experience of living in a world of constant change.
Interesting.
He tapped into feelings of uncertainty, anxiety, even a sense of displacement that so many people were feeling.
So instead of writing about technology, he's writing about how technology makes people feel.
That's it. And that's really what resonated with readers.
I can see that.
It wasn't just about gadgets and gizmos anymore.
Right.
It was about the human impact,
Yeah.
that shared experience of trying to find your place in a world that feels like it's constantly in motion.
Mm-hmm. That's something I think a lot of people can relate to, especially these days. It feels like we're all just trying to keep up with the pace of change,
Yeah,
but it can be overwhelming.
absolutely. And I think that's one of the most profound takeaways from Mason's story.
What's that?
This reminder that we're not alone in these feelings.
Oh, yeah.
We're all navigating this complex,
Right.
ever-evolving world together.
And it sounds like Mason tapped into that sense of shared experience, and that's what really connected with readers.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this is where the idea of community becomes really important in his story.
Okay.
By sharing his own vulnerabilities,
Mm-hmm.
his anxieties through his writing,
Yeah.
he creates a space for other people to feel seen,
Right.
heard, and understood.
It's like he's built a community around that feeling of we're all in this together,
Exactly.
which is a powerful thing, especially when it feels like everything is changing so fast.
It is. And it's not just about finding comfort in shared struggles. you know?
Yeah.
It's also about that collective power to shape the future,
That's a good point.
to create a world that's more adaptable,
Right.
more inclusive,
Mm-hmm.
and really responsive to that human need for connection and meaning.
So how do we do that? How do we move beyond just reacting to change and start actively shaping a future that feels good? I mean, what can we learn from Mason's experience?
Well, Mason's story offers some really valuable clues.
Okay.
First, it highlights how important it is to embrace a growth mindset. That belief that we can develop our abilities and intelligence through hard work and dedication.
Right.
That's crucial for navigating a world where the only constant is change.
So instead of getting stuck in that fear of failure or obsolescence,
Yeah,
we should focus on developing the skills and knowledge we need to thrive in this constantly evolving world.
exactly. It's about seeing challenges not as roadblocks,
Yeah,
but as opportunities for learning and growth.
I like that.
It's about cultivating curiosity, adaptability,
Mm-hmm.
and a willingness to get out of our comfort zones.
What about that feeling of being overwhelmed, though? It can be so intense.
Yeah.
Especially when it feels like the world is spinning faster and faster.
That's where mindfulness and self-awareness become really important.
Okay, how so?
It's about taking the time to understand how you respond emotionally to change.
Right.
What are your triggers?
Mm-hmm.
And what are some coping mechanisms that work for you?
So taking a moment to breathe, to reflect, and connect with your own inner compass before getting swept away by all the external chaos.
Exactly. It's about finding that inner balance,
Yeah.
that sense of groundedness that helps you navigate change with clarity and purpose.
This has been such a great conversation.
It has.
We've gone from childhood expectations and career setbacks to the power of storytelling
Yeah.
and the importance of community.
It's amazing how one person's journey can touch on so many universal themes.
It really is.
And there's still more to explore.
Oh, there is.
Yeah. In the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
we're going to explore how Mason's story can inspire you,
Awesome.
the listener,
Yeah.
to cultivate a more positive and proactive approach to change, even when it feels scary or uncertain.
We've covered so much ground talking about Mason's life. It's really amazing how his story speaks to what so many people are going through these days.
Yeah,
That feeling of pressure, all this constant change, and wanting to find where we belong in it all.
it's true. And what's so inspiring is that he didn't just get through those challenges.
Right.
He actually used them to fuel his creativity
Yeah.
and connect with others who felt the same way.
I keep thinking about that sense of community he built. It's not just about having people to, commiserate with,
Yeah.
but like a shared energy to create a better future together.
Right. It's like Mason's story is this blueprint for how to navigate change with intention,
I like that. Okay, so how do we become better at navigating all this change? Where do we even start?
Well, the source material actually highlights a few key strategies
Oh, perfect.
that you, the listener, can start using right now.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, remember that growth mindset we talked about.
Yeah.
That's crucial. Instead of seeing every change as a threat,
Mm-hmm.
try to approach it with curiosity. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this?
Right.
What new skills might be helpful?
So instead of freaking out about, let's say, AI taking our jobs,
Yeah,
we could focus on the new opportunities AI might create or the skills we need to work alongside AI.
that's it. It's about shifting your perspective from this is happening to me to how can I actually use this to my advantage?
But how do you stay ahead of the curve? I mean, things are changing so fast. It's hard to know what skills will even be relevant next year, let alone 5 years from now.
That's a great point. And this is where Mason's approach to lifelong learning comes in.
Okay.
He wasn't just passively reading stuff.
Right.
He was actively seeking out information, experimenting, and building relationships with people who were also on that learning journey.
So being proactive instead of reactive.
Exactly.
Like subscribing to newsletters, taking online courses, maybe even going to conferences to stay up to date.
All of that. And don't forget about connecting with others who are going through similar things.
Right.
Share what you're learning, learn from their experiences, and build that support system.
It's like having a group of buddies to help you navigate the rough waters.
Exactly.
And maybe even spot some good opportunities.
I like that. And remember, it's not all about external stuff like skills and knowledge.
Oh, right.
It's also about the internal work, the emotional intelligence you need to handle all these changes.
Right. We were talking about mindfulness earlier. How does that fit into all of this?
It's about building self-awareness, learning to recognize how you react emotionally to change.
Yeah.
Think about it. You tend to freeze up or jump into action without thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Once you know your patterns,
Right.
you can start to manage them better.
So if you know you get overwhelmed easily,
Yeah.
you build in time to process things.
Exactly.
Or if you're impulsive, you create a system to slow down and think before you act.
Exactly. And don't forget self-care.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with big changes, It's easy to neglect your own needs.
That's true.
Taking care of yourself, both physically and mentally, is crucial for building resilience.
This deep dive has been so insightful.
It has.
We've gone way beyond just analyzing Mason's life. It's almost like we've uncovered a guide for thriving in a world that just won't stop changing.
And that's the amazing thing about deep dives like this.
Yeah.
We start with one person's story
Right.
and end up with these insights that can help us all navigate this crazy, complex world.
So as we wrap up, what's the one thing you want listeners to take away from all of this?
I think it's this. Change is a part of life, but it doesn't have to be something we fear. If you embrace a growth mindset, take care of yourself, and connect with others on the same journey,
Yeah.
you can not only adapt to change, but actually shape it into something positive and meaningful.
That's a great takeaway. Thanks for that. So until our next deep dive, keep learning, keep growing, and keep navigating those waves of change.